It wasn't supposed to happen. She hadn't even meant to be there. The mansion pulsed with golden light and laughter, the kind that belonged to a world she didn't fit in. Champagne flutes, designer masks, whispered scandals beneath chandeliers. She had crashed the party on a dare, a spark of rebellion against a life that had grown too predictable, too silent. And yet, in the middle of all that glitter and noise, her eyes found his sharp, magnetic, dangerous. For a single heartbeat, the world forgot to breathe. He wasn't meant for her either. He was the kind of man who carried mystery like a second skin, whose silence spoke louder than 1,000 words. She didn't know his name, only that his gaze held stories of power, pain, and something unspoken. When their paths crossed near the garden balcony, the air shifted as if fate itself leaned closer to watch. Words stumbled and laughter trembled, but before she could think, before she could remind herself that she didn't belong there, he kissed her. It wasn't a polite, fleeting kiss. It was wildfire. It stole her breath, her balance, her certainty. It was the kind of kiss that rewrites rules, that burns through reason and defies consequences. For a moment, she wasn't the girl who didn't belong. She was part of something electric, alive, undeniable. Around them, the world blurred, the music softened, time stretched, and all she could feel was the heat of his hand at her waist and the unspoken promise in his touch. Then it ended, too soon and too suddenly. Reality crashed back in, the laughter from inside, the weight of the moment, the quiet panic in both their eyes. She pulled away, breathless, her heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. He tried to say something, but words failed him, and before either could make sense of what had happened, she was gone, swallowed by the crowd, by the night, by the storm she didn't yet realize. She'd started. The next morning the world looked the same, but she didn't. The memory of that kiss followed her like perfume, haunting, lingering, impossible to wash away. She didn't know who he really was, or what he meant to her future, but she could feel it. Something had shifted. That single reckless moment had changed everything. What began as a mistake now felt like the beginning of a story she couldn't stop, even if she tried. The night had been nothing more than a whim, a spontaneous decision born from boredom, curiosity, and a touch of rebellion. She wasn't on the guest list, wasn't supposed to walk through those glittering doors draped in velvet and gold. Yet there she was, wrapped in a dress borrowed from a friend, her face hidden behind a silver mask that shimmered under the chandeliers. The laughter of strangers filled the air, and the orchestra's music danced across the marble floors. She told herself she'd leave in 10 minutes. She told herself this world wasn't hers, but then she saw him, tall, composed, and undeniably magnetic. His presence cut through the crowd like a quiet storm, drawing her eyes before she even realized she was staring. He stood apart from the noise, the kind of man who didn't need attention to command it. His black mask framed eyes that were sharp but unreadable, and when he looked her way, it was as if the entire room faded into silence. There was something dangerous about him, not in the way of a villain, but in the way of someone who'd lived too many truths and buried too many lies. He didn't smile, not at first, but when she laughed nervously after bumping into him, a hint of warmth cracked through that polished exterior. Words slipped between them, light at first, meaningless, maybe, but beneath the surface, tension simmered. Every glance, every accidental brush of fingers, pulled her deeper into a gravity she didn't understand. The kiss didn't come with warning. It wasn't planned, wasn't sought. It simply happened. 1 second, they stood inches apart on the balcony beneath the string lights, their breaths tangling in the cool night air. The next, the world fell away. His hand found her waist, steady but desperate, and her heart gave in before her mind could protest. It wasn't a soft kiss. It was fierce, consuming, a collision of two worlds that were never meant to meet. It was the kind of kiss that shakes something loose inside you, something you didn't even know was caged. She forgot her name, forgot why she was there. For that heartbeat in time, there was no past, no future, just the fire between them. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. She stepped back, dazed, as though waking from a dream she wasn't ready to leave. The music from the ballroom echoed faintly, and for a moment she wondered if anyone else had seen. He whispered her name, though she never remembered telling him, and that sent a shiver through her. Fear, confusion, curiosity, all tangled in one breath. The reality of who he might be, of who she might have just kissed, hit her like a wave. Without another word, she turned and disappeared into the blur of silk and champagne, her heart pounding, her mind spinning with questions that had no answers. When dawn broke, the world returned to its ordinary rhythm, but she did not. Every thought, every heartbeat replayed that kiss in fragments, the warmth, the danger, the impossible pull. She didn't know his name, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their story wasn't over. Something had shifted in her, quietly but irreversibly. That kiss wasn't just an accident. It was a spark that would ignite everything that came next. A moment that would follow her long after the music faded. A memory that refused to let go. Because sometimes one kiss doesn't end a night. It begins a lifetime of consequences. Morning sunlight crept through the blinds, soft but merciless, exposing everything the night had tried to hide. Her room, once a sanctuary, now felt like a stage after the play had ended, quiet, hollow, and scattered with pieces of a story she couldn't yet understand. The dress she'd worn still hung over the chair, smelling faintly of champagne and night air. Her lipstick-stained mask lay abandoned on the dresser, a symbol of a version of herself she barely recognized. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt it again, the press of his lips, the heat in his touch, the way her heart had betrayed her better judgment. It wasn't just a kiss anymore. It was a storm that refused to die, echoing in the silence of morning. She told herself it meant nothing, that it was just the haze of a reckless night. But the lie cracked the moment she looked at her reflection. There was something different in her eyes, a tremor of confusion, a flicker of something dangerously close to longing. She tried to shake it off, pacing across the room, telling herself she didn't even know his name. But memory has a cruel way of lingering. His face, half hidden behind the mask, haunted her. His voice, low and steady, replayed in fragments she couldn't piece together. Who was he? Why did that one moment feel like it had rewritten her whole sense of control? The morning was supposed to bring clarity instead. It brought questions that felt heavier than truth itself. Her phone buzzed, a message, just one line, no name, no greeting, only words that made her pulse skip. "We need to talk. Last night wasn't what you think." Her stomach tightened as if the floor had shifted beneath her. How did he find her? What did he mean by "wasn't what you think"? Panic and curiosity fought for dominance in her chest. Every instinct screamed to delete the message, to pretend it never happened, to bury the night along with its kiss. But her fingers hovered over the screen, trembling. She wanted to know, needed to know, because deep down, something in that kiss had felt too real to be a mistake, too deliberate to be an accident. She spent hours pacing before finally replying, her heart pounding with every letter she typed. The city outside was alive with noise, but inside her apartment there was only silence and anticipation. What if he was someone she shouldn't have met? What if that night had tied her to something far darker than she imagined? The questions circled her like ghosts, and she realized that innocence ends not in betrayal, but in knowing too much. The kiss had started a chain, one that was already pulling her toward truths she wasn't ready to face. By noon, she found herself standing in front of a cafe she'd never been to, clutching her coat tighter as the wind teased her hair. She didn't know if he would come or if she even wanted him to, but she knew one thing for sure: the morning after chaos isn't just about regret. It's about awakening, about realizing that sometimes one reckless night can shift the gravity of your entire life. And as the bell above the cafe door chimed, her heart whispered the truth she couldn't deny anymore: the chaos wasn't over. It had only just begun.